Hello everyone, and welcome to the config and tech video for the cat lady. Get my notes open in my folder. This is the install folder for the game. I'm using the Steam version. I don't even know if you can get this on GOG.com. You probably can, but this is the Steam version. It does come with a soundtrack of 44 tracks from the game. It's pretty sweet. The game's got a lot of pretty decent music in it. Good music, I should say. So in this video we will be setting up Cat Lady, general settings and advanced where needed. This will hopefully put the game in the best playable state it can be. Any links that are covered will be in the description of the video. So the first thing I want to focus on is the WinSetup.exe or Windows setup. This file right here. This is a configuration file for the game that you need to run once to save some default settings. When you launch the game from Steam, you will be given the option to run the game or run the setup. So you can do it either way. You can run it directly from the folder or when you first do it through Steam. And then here I'm just giving you the path. Whatever your install letter is, the Steam path to the Cat Lady folder, and then you're looking for WinSetup. But easy enough to just run it from Steam. So let's take a look at this WinSetup.exe together and go over the options it contains. Go ahead and run it. So you'll be presented with this little window here. So it's going to tell you here first off under graphics settings, the native game resolution is 800 by 600, 32-bit. That's just the default resolution the game runs at. Drivers where you can pick whether you want to use DirectX, OpenGL, or software renderer. I would go by the order that they're listed as far as the best, not so good, and the worst. And I recommend pick Direct3D 9 for DirectX 9. If you have problems for whatever reason, which you shouldn't, if you're on decent modern GPU graphics card, then bump it down to OpenGL. And if you're still having problems on OpenGL, then you might want to consider upgrading your hardware. That's what I would suggest. So start in windowed mode, yes or no. I want to run it in full screen just to get the most optimal performance that I can. But if for whatever reason you want to run it in windowed mode, this is how you do it. And for mode under here, this is where you can select your actual resolution. It's funny because it says the native, well, it's listed here. So I was going to say, it doesn't even show the native resolution, but it's up here. And then it should show your actual desktop resolution, which in my case is 1920 by 1080. But then they have these other odd, resolutions down here if you want to mess with those. It'll look mostly the same if you were to pick the native resolution, but I feel you'll get a little sharper clarity in the image if you pick your desktop resolution, so I advise you to do that. Once again, if you're having trouble getting a correct picture resolution, then put it on the native, but try your desktop resolution first. And by nature, this aspect ratio, this game runs at a 4:3 aspect, so either way it's going to fill vertically the screen, but it's going to have bars on the sides, and that's normal. That's how this game is supposed to look. Which brings us to the scaling methods. So if you're running it in full screen, this applies. This is for windowed mode only. I put them both the same, but you'll have three options. I'm not entirely sure what max round multiplier does, but I'm not using it. Fill screen will actually fill it vertically like it would normally, but it will also stretch the image horizontally so that you won't have any black bars on the left and right. But that's not what you want to do, because that's going to warp the image entirely. Everything is going to be short and stretched and warped. Using stretch preserving aspect ratio is what you want to pick. This will give you the bars on the sides, but it will look correct. The image will not be stretched. So I picked the same for windowed mode. It actually has a fourth option. You can pick none original game size. So play around with that if you want to do windowed mode. But the settings you see here should, get you the correct preservation of how, the picture and the graphics should look. Scaling method, nearest neighbor or linear interpolation. I can't recall off the top of my head the difference between these two, but usually nearest neighbor is what you want to pick. It's usually the default in these situations. So just go ahead and pick that. And then gameplay settings, game language, game default, which will be English. And then you can pick any other language here that you would like. If you want English, just leave it on default. So before you click anything else, make sure you also click advanced, which you see these little lines here, arrows. This gives you like an extended advanced version of the options. So another section over here. So I do recommend putting vertical sync on, just to avoid any screen tearing that might occur. In the unlikelihood that you're going to be using an old school CRT television, you're not going to have to use this setting, because you're not going to have a screen. You're not going to be using a CRT running at 85 hertz, basically. Smooth scaled sprites, it says it requires fast CPUs only. If your CPU is pretty decent, this game's not really graphically intense. Go ahead and click that to have better sprites. Downgrade 32-bit graphics to 16-bit. I don't really know why you'd want to do that. You're just going to degrade the quality of the graphics. So leave that unchecked. And render sprites at screen resolution. I'm not entirely sure what this is going to do. I did test it with this on. I didn't notice a whole lot of difference, but I'm guessing there's probably a slight increased clarity of sprites by having them rendered to your resolution instead of the 800 by 600. So I would recommend go ahead and checking that as well. Just leave these two unchecked, the downgrade and the use CRT monitors. Sound options, you have direct sound and MIDI music, default direct sound device, and default MCI music device. These will be your best choices in most cases. It's the default, and it works and sounds just fine. Use voice pack if available. This game has a lot of spoken dialogue in it. This is checked by default anyway. Go ahead and use that. If not, you won't hear any of the voices that are in the game, which you don't want to do, and you'll have to read everything yourself. Mouse options, auto lock to window, mouse speed, basically 1 times 100% default. But this game has no mouse support, so I'm not sure why this was in here. Maybe this was a debug option left in by the developer or something for him to test his game. But basically this has no effect on anything as far as I'm aware. And then sprite cache maximum size, it's set to 128 megabytes by default, but I went ahead and bumped it up to 512 just because, this game's not taxing. This is not going to do anything to deplete the memory of your graphics card or anything like that. So I just went ahead and basically maxed that out. And then custom game save path. This is where it will save your games by default. where the game's installed. If you want a custom area for that, then you need to check this box and then specify a new directory on your computer. As you can see, this game is made in the Adventure Game Studio version 3.4.1.11. There'll be a good handful of games that I'll play on this channel that are made in this game engine. So don't worry about really saving and running the game here unless you want to, but make sure you save your settings and then you're done with that. And that will conclude setting up the when-setup.exe, which is only a one-time thing. You don't have to do this every time. You don't have to access this every time. You just have to set it up once. The game does have a few minor settings within the menu of the game that we'll get into. Let me take a sip of drink real quick, one moment. I did the introduction video for the cat lady before this video, and I kid you not, I did about 10 takes, I think, before I was able to get everything out. Okay. So the next time you run the game from Steam, select the Play the Cat Lady option, then select the Always Use This Option checkbox below. This way you can avoid this pop-up screen next time you play. So it tries to give you a choice, which is a good thing. That the game developers and Steam do that now when there's an external setup, you know, that you need to run first, because a lot of games don't tell you. It's just there, but when Steam would play the game, it's just going to run the game itself, the executable. But once it's configured, it's like a game launcher, but you only need to do it once. And then you can tell Steam, essentially like what I'm saying here, you can tell Steam to essentially just launch the Cat Lady executable next time you play, okay? In-game options. The core options, as already mentioned, are in the when-setup.exe. The game has a few options in the menu. I will point these out during gameplay part 1, when we play the first part. But I will also list them here. So the first option is subtitles, either on or off, and then you have a gamma or brightness setting, which is defaulted to normal. In the game, you're supposed to use the plus or minus either on your number pad or to the right of your number keys on your keyboard, or to the left of your backspace key. Those two sets of plus or minus keys is what you would use to either increase or decrease the brightness. And we'll go into this gamma setting in a little more detail below, because I have more I want to say about it. And then you have the third option, which is language. So then you'll pick the language you want to use, which you can also specify in the when setup as well. They both relate to the same option. So if you adjust it in here, it should reflect in the game's menu and vice versa. But that's all you get in the game. At least you get a brightness option and subtitles. It's really nice. But the video settings and all that are all done through the when setup. Okay, controls. The Cat Lady is a very simple game to control, and is a keyboard-driven game with no mouse controls. I will point these controls out during gameplay part 1, but I'll talk about them here briefly. So you have movement / inventory select, and this is done by the left and right arrow keys. I'm not even sure if the A and D keys move you left and right. They may, but the game may strictly use the arrow keys. And it's only left and right movement because this game is basically a side scroller where you just go left and right for movement. And then the inventory select is selecting between different items in your inventory, is what I mean by that. And then inventory, that is accessed by pressing the down key, and then it will highlight your inventory bar, kind of like in a hidden object game, where the bar would be. That'll put you in your inventory mode. And then you have interact, inventory, close. So if you press the up arrow, it'll go back to the normal screen out of the inventory, and it also acts as an interaction key. So if you stand over a door that you can open, you'll see a tooltip in the game to interact with it. You press the up arrow to interact, or if you want to talk to a person, for example. And then confirm or select is done by pressing the enter key. I'm not sure if the enter key on the number pad works, but the one above the right shift does. The menu is accessed by pressing the escape key. That'll get you back into the options and let you save your game and quit and all that stuff. And yeah, save your game. You can save your game hard save at any time you want through the menu, but then there's also a quick save and quick load option. And I will talk about this in the next section, which is what we'll cover right here. Just a little more explanation needed for this part. So quick saving and quick loading. You can save your game at any time from the menu, and the game also has a quick save, quick load feature. Depending on the button used to save, this will correspond with a matching button to load. So you basically have 4 save slots and 4 load slots for those saves. And those are represented by the F1 keys. F1, F2, F3, F4. And then you have 4 corresponding load slots, F5, F6, F7, F8. So the combinations have to match, meaning if you press F1 to save, you have to press F5 to load that save. You can't press F1 and then press F7 and it load. It'll tell you there's no save in this slot. So if it's F1 save, you have to load with F5. If you save with F2, you have to load with F6, and then so on. So in general, just use F1 and F5 as your primary save and loads. I'll probably do both. I tend to, when a game has quick saving, in saving in the game, I like to save in the game, do a hard save, you'd call it, but then I also like to make quick saves if I can, just for backup saves, for crashes, and the fact that you can quick save usually in a game. This game will let you quick save and hard save anytime you want. But most games you have to interact with something in the game world that's spread out throughout the game to save. You know, there's a penalty for death. And then you may be able to quick save in the menu whenever you want. But this game you can do both whenever you want, but I will be doing both just so I can have a backup save. Just a good handy thing to do, you know, have as many saves as you can to back up from or recover from, especially when recording for YouTube, because you never know when a game's going to crash or do something weird, and you might need to completely scrap the video you just recorded or are like 30 minutes into and like start it all over, you know. And you may need a save to do that with so that everything seems, you know, mostly seamless in your playthrough. So always a good thing to have backups for saving. Other information, let's do it one at a time here. FPS, or frame rate. This game is made in the Adventure Game Studio engine, and the FPS, or frame rate, is locked at 40 FPS. This is normal for games made in this engine. I've played another game on my channel called the Charnel House Trilogy, and that was made in the Adventure Game Studio engine as well, and it functions basically the same way. It's locked around 40 FPS. But it works okay with these games because these are not high movement games. You will notice probably a little delay in the character's movement as opposed to like a fully 3D 60 frames a second game, you know. But it works okay in these games. It doesn't affect the gameplay that it only runs at 40. I'm still recording at 60, you know, but the game is only playing at 40. Okay, the next thing here is a freeze. So the gamma option I talked about above, and the menu doesn't work exactly right. Like when you try to configure it from the menu there, it like pops up some text and it doesn't really do anything, and if you wait long enough it kind of goes away, and then like the screen either brightens or darkens, and then the option will change from like normal to brightest and then darkest, I think. So I think maybe there's 3 settings: normal, brightest, and darkest. But it doesn't work exactly right. It is set to normal by default and should be fine left at that. I found messing with the gamma option will freeze the game in the menu, so I've had the game freeze on me 2 or 3 times just trying to mess with the gamma in the menu for some reason. The game does tell you when you're in the game, though, that you can use the plus or minus keys to adjust the brightness, and this does work. But if the game freezes on you in the menu because you mess with the gamma and the menu in the title screen, you'll have to Alt F4 to get the game to quit back to Steam or your desktop. So if you do need to adjust the gamma, wait until you're in the game and then use the plus or minus keys on your keyboard to adjust the brightness up and down. But leave it at default normal and you should be fine. Just be aware there's a chance for it freezing your game. And then the last thing here is a crash. Sometimes when I am playing games on YouTube, you'll see me bring up blue text in the upper right of the screen. This is a program called Riva Tuner, R-I-V-A-T-U-N-E-R. It also works in conjunction with another program called MSI Afterburner. Riva Tuner, and it shows my FPS and general PC/GPU usage data. So like your temperatures, how much memory you're using, your frame rate. That's what Riva Tuner does. It's like a text overlay for data statistics. So you can see what your hardware is doing in your PC and how your game is performing when you're playing in active real time. And there's also another program called MSI Afterburner that it works with, which I also use, and I use that to like modify my fan curve, for my graphics card fans so that they spin faster based on temperatures, that the graphics card gets to. So I use both programs. But the cat lady will crash if you bring up the Riva Tuner overlay during the game to look at your readings. Certain games don't work well with Riva Tuner, and this is one of them. And it's probably just because it's in this adventure game studio. So I do suggest Riva Tuner and MSI Afterburner if you're looking for those things I've just mentioned for software to do. They're very good. But Riva Tuner can, MSI Afterburner can on some occasions, but they can, just from them running on your computer, not being installed, but running, can cause particular touchy games to not run or crash just because those programs are running, but it's very rare. But this is just, basically for people that are using this, because most people that are have a keybind on their keyboard or something to bring it up. So just make sure you don't accidentally touch it for this game. You don't need it, because obviously this game's not taxing on the computer. But just don't press it, because you're likely to crash your game. Okay guys, so in the next video, we will be getting into the gameplay directly. Thank you very, very much for watching and listening. I really do appreciate it. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye.